All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'm going to introduce Mr. G.A. Bartik. I see, thank you, Randall. He says he has his whole team there and they are ready to go and join us for the presentation. That's awesome. Thank you, Mr. Connolly. Happy to have you and your team here with us. GA is a sales extraordinaire. He's an expert in everything sales, sales training, sales management, sales skills, sales tactics. So we at Alamon Consulting have invited him and his team in to help us educate our clients on how to create the best customer experience and sales experience for their clients. So go ahead, GA, and introduce yourself and we'll get started.
All right, well, I appreciate that, Brandy, and hopefully everybody can hear me well. Again, I'm G.A. Bartik, president of R3 Consultants, and really what we spend our time doing is helping improve the performance of sales and customer service teams. And I started my career at Nordstrom, and everything we do is all around the customer experience. That's my DNA. That's what I learned about how to create a great customer experience. And if you create a great customer experience, the sales will come. But the key is in creating a great customer experience, how do you go about doing that? And how do you as leaders lead your team in helping them create what I call a unique and different, but more importantly, at the end of the day, a really positive buying experience for your team. And it's all about making your frontline employee. How do they communicate? What do they say? How do they say it? And making that your company's competitive advantage. So R3 stands for the right product to the right client at the right time. And what we focus on is how to get your team to say the right thing at the right time in those critical moments when they're talking to a high-value customer or a high-value prospect. And that's what today's all about, is about how is you as a salesperson and or a leader can really lead your team to getting great results by really improving the communication skills and, more importantly, improving that customer process. So really what we believe, it takes two parts to be great in sales. One part is the process, the other part is your personality. You have to have the right process in place that allows you then, if you get the right process, to put your personality into it. So let's break those two down a bit if we can. When it comes down to process, we call it freedom within a framework. And really what we're looking for is giving our clients the right process of how do you communicate? How do you quickly build rapport and reduce resistance with a client? How do you then ask the right questions and listen? How do you really present a tailored solution that's benefit-rich and feature-light, but really ties into what you learned in discovery? And then after you present that tailored solution, we know for a fact that you're going to get some objections. So how do you overcome those objections in a non-confrontational manner? Then how do you ask for the order? So it's all about having the right process in place. And that's what we look at and we work with our clients. We take a look at what is your organization doing and what are the best practices that your top performers are doing, that if more people are doing these things, plus we take top performing behaviors and processes from all of our other clients and bring those into our clients. But it really comes down, do you have the right process? But more important, it's not a script, folks. We don't believe in scripts. And part of the reason we don't believe in scripts is, you know what? At the end of the day, they don't work. Most of the time, you can tell, think about it. Have you ever had somebody call you up and you can tell they're reading a script? Here's the other piece. If you really script the process for your team, does the customer always follow their lines? No, they don't. So it's about having the right process. We call it freedom within a framework. You have your soccer field here. There you have your boundaries. You have your lines, positions, onsides, offsides. That's the process, but as a player, you're allowed to put your personality in between the lines. And that's what we mean by having the right process in place. Let me explain what I mean by that, because if you get the right process in place, it allows you to take the variable of the customer, put it into your process, and come up with a predictable conclusion. Let me explain what I mean by that if I can. Maybe you guys all can see this here. This here is a 3x5 card. And would you agree this 3x5 card, it's smaller than my face. Would you agree? So it'd be pretty tough to cut a hole in it large enough to put my face through. But if I have the right process in place, along with the right tools, I can quickly, efficiently, and effectively do what a moment ago looked impossible to do. But it's all about having the right process so I can execute that process quickly, efficiently, and effectively. When I have some, 65 people watching, I can hopefully come up with a predictable conclusion. And in this case, what's the predictable conclusion? It's a 3x5 card with a hole in it large enough to put my face through. Now, how was I able to do that? I had to have, one, the right process. I had to have the right tools, but I also needed to practice it enough so that I could execute the fundamentals in those critical situations. And that's part of the thing that we see most often with organizations, that they underestimate the amount of time, energy, effort it takes to become a great communicator. Like this morning before this webinar started, I was kind of rehearsing in my mind how I was going to kick it off and what I was going to say, how I was going to say it. And folks, in my mind, it was beautiful. Every word was slowly articulated. You all laughed at the right time. But does something ever happen? What you think you're going to say and what you actually say are what? Sometimes two totally different things. That's what a great process that allows you to do. It allows you to relax and let the process take over so you can truly focus on the customer. And let me tell you, the customer can feel that. This next part, though, is that personality. We don't want to create a bunch of little robots out there, but we want to work with clients and make sure you have the right process in place that allows your team to put their personality into that process. And that's when you start creating success, when you have the right process in place and it allows them to put their personality into it so they can really, truly have a great conversation. And that, at the end of the day, is really what we're looking for. And how can you turn your team's conversation? It's not the products or services at the end of the day for most organizations. It's the one-on-one conversation that your sales team's having, your account managers team's having, your customer service team's having. Those conversations that are happening sometimes hundreds, if not thousands of times a day in lots of companies, is how can you create the right process to help your team have better conversations in those critical moments. And a big part of that is really about understanding your customers and really knowing what we call their emotional needs. Now, everybody has two types of needs. They have an illogical need and they have an emotional need. Now, I'm kind of casual today, but a lot of our clients, we do a lot of financial service clients, we do a lot of banking clients, we have to wear a suit and tie. So there I was at the store, trying on my suit, and I walked out of the dressing room, and whenever you have to try on a new suit, they get the tailor over, they put you on a little pedestal, in front of the little three-way mirrors that kind of shows all my imperfections. So there I am, I'm talking to the salesperson, the tailor's kind of working on my suit, kind of pinning it up and stuff, and a young lady walks by and she says, "Wow, sir, that suit makes you look thin." At which point I turned to the salesperson and I said, "I'll take it." But here's the thing. When I got home, I told my wife, I said, "Honey, look at my beautiful new suit. I got it on sale." Now, why did I tell my wife I got it on sale? The reason I did is because I bought it emotionally, but I rationalized that purchase in my mind. I rationalized it logically. And here's the thing about this emotional and logical needs. People do not make decisions logically. They make them emotionally. But how do most salespeople sell? How many times have you sat there and watched your salesperson, or as a salesperson yourself, or you maybe right now, you may have presented a proposal where the customer says, "Oh my gosh, this looks great." You say, if you spend X with us and buy this product, you'll get a 10 times X ROI, and they still said no. Now think about it. If people made decisions logically, they would have to say yes to that 10X proposal. But do they always? No, they don't. Because most salespeople, they sell to the logical need. People don't make decisions logically. They make them emotionally, and then they rationalize them logically. And so the key is, do you truly understand your client's emotional needs? Do you understand their primary motivating factor? What gets them excited? Because here's the thing, folks. This is what we're talking about is new school sales. Now, I'm sure a lot of you have been in sales a long time, and I think old school sales, and I've read tons of books, and I was there myself when I failed miserably in sales, where old school sales says, find their pain point, rub some salt in it, and if the pain is great enough, they will purchase from you. But what we find nowadays in all the research we do, that pain causes paralysis, but excitement causes movement. So think about a deal that's maybe stalled right now. Do you truly understand your client's emotional needs? What's going to get them excited? It's not about, yes, you have to understand their pain points, but moving forward, what is the benefit of them purchasing your product or service? How is it going to benefit them? How's it going to benefit their company? And that's the key to really understanding that emotional need, because that's where the purchase is made, in that emotional need versus the logical need. Because if people bought it logically, you would simply say, hey, buy our product, you're going to get a X amount of ROI. Logically, that makes sense. They'd have to say yes, but they don't, do they? And this is one piece where we see a lot of sales people miss. They simply sell logically. They don't ask enough questions to truly understand your client's emotional needs. So this is where we talk about transitioning into discovery. And you can either do one of two things here. You can ask the right questions and listen, or you can launch into a sales pitch and talk. And how many times as a customer have you been in a situation where they ask one, maybe two questions, and bam, they start going, oh, I can solve your problem. They start going right into a sales pitch. And it always cracks me up, and our team talks about it a lot. When we go and work with our clients, we always hear that sometimes the new guys, they're getting beginner's luck. They're nailing it out there in the sales field. And when we look at it, why are they doing such a good job? Even though they're new, they don't know all the questions they ask. But here's the thing. They also don't have all the answers, so they have to ask great questions. The top salespeople, or more experienced salespeople, what do? They ask a couple of questions. Oh, I can solve your problem, and they start going into that sales pitch. And it's really about listening to understand versus listening to respond. So let me explain what I mean by that. Listen to understand versus listen to respond. I mean, how do most people listen? Have you ever talked to somebody, and as you're talking to them, they're going, they're waiting for you to take a little breath so they can jump in? Are they listening to understand, or are they listening to respond? So there I was in Chicago. I was speaking that day. It was late in the afternoon. I just got done with my class. My wife gives me a call. I'm like, hey, honey, what's going on? She goes, oh, I am so upset with your son, Jack. All of a sudden, he's my son. I'm like, well, what's going on, honey? And my wife says, well, I just dropped him off at his tennis lesson. When he got out of the car, Jack didn't have any shoes on. So I asked my wife the obvious question. Well, hey, honey, how come when Jack got in the car, why did you look at his feet? Now, how well did that go over with Mrs. Bartik? Not so much. So I decided, though, I'm going to take out my shovel and dig just a little deeper hole, because why did she call me? She obviously called me to get help in solving her problem. So I'm like, well, hey, honey, you know, you still got time. I think at the tennis club there, I think they have a little pro shop. Maybe you can buy some shoes for Jack there. Or if need be, you can run up to Sports Authority. You still probably got time. Leave him at the tennis lesson for a few minutes. He can miss the first portion of it, get his shoes, then he can enjoy the rest of the tennis lesson. Again, why did Mrs. Bartik call me when I was 1,500 miles away? Did she want me to solve her problem? No. Was I listening to understand, or was I listening to respond? I was listening to respond, of course. So think about that. How are you listening? And can your customers really feel when you are listening to respond? And think about your team. Are they walking in? Do they know what questions to ask? Now, when it really comes down to knowing what questions to ask, it's really about really being able to then build a good battery of questions that really talks about a specific way of asking questions. Do you know their current situation? And do you know their desired situation? And in between those, that's what we call the buying gap. And a big part of discovery is not just for us a big part of the reason we ask questions and we work with our clients to help their team ask better questions is a big part of that discovery process is simply for your customers' benefit. So they start hearing themselves, the questions they're asking, a lot of times questions they did not ever ask themselves. So it's really about understanding their current situation, where they've been, where they are right now, but more importantly, where do they want to go? And what are the expectations? In our case, we ask the question after we know where they've been, where they are, and where they want to go. What are your expectations of a consulting partner? And so really sitting down and writing out and having the battery of questions at the ready, that becomes part of your DNA. So you don't have to think about it. So seriously, think about this. When you're in a sales situation, or if your team is in a sales situation, what are all the mental gymnastics that is going through your customer's mind? I mean, think about that, or not through your customer's mind, through your salesperson's mind. They're thinking about, okay, is this customer, are they paying attention? Are they buying what I'm saying? What do I ask next? Where do I go? Oh my gosh, I gotta make sure I get home to pick up my kid. All this stuff's going through the mind. And that's what happens when you don't have a very effective process in place. All that clutter can start affecting the focus you have on your clients. But when you have the right process in place, it allows you to relax and know the process is there, rely on the process, lean on the process, so you can lean into your client. So really understand the questions you want to ask. And a lot of times we work with financial advisors. And a lot of times the financial advisors, they will walk in and the first question they ask a customer is, hey, you know what, how much money do you have? Where do you have it? And how long have you been there? Who's your current financial advisor? What do you like about them? What would you like to see? What do you like? What don't you like about them? And who are all those questions for? They're all for me, the salesperson. And again, a lot of the questions that we ask, hey, tell me a little bit about your company. How did you guys get started? How did you get started? Does everybody you're talking to have a story about how they got started in the business they're in? So make sure your team has the right process for asking enough questions. And we go general to specific. Start off with, hey, how did you get started in the business? How has the business changed? And then we call them double click questions. When you hear an answer, can you ask a follow-up question based on the information that you learned? So this discovery process, it's what we see by most salespeople around the world. They skip the discovery process. They ask one, maybe two questions, they jump right into solution. It's the hardest thing for a manager to do is to get their team to ask great questions. And really what we do is we work with the organizations to develop the list of questions, but more importantly, teach them how to ask the right questions and listen, and how to ask those double-click questions. But more importantly, it's this next phase of the process that really creates what I think is the most important thing you can possibly do in an entire sales presentation. That's what we call our discovery summary. So there I was. One of the first sales I made when I left Nordstrom and got into consulting was to Oakley Sunglasses. I actually called them up on a cold call, and they had a call center that was taking customer service calls where people were calling in to either get their lenses replaced, get the nose pads replaced on the glasses, or get what they call their temples replaced. And Jenny, the sales manager, I called up on a cold call. She says, yes, we're looking for some training. Why don't you come on up? So I sat down with Jenny, and I walked right through the same process we teach our clients. I did my pre-call planning. I built some rapport with an agenda statement and a credibility statement. Then I did a deep dive into discovery. I learned about the customer service team, where they've been, where they are right now, where they want to go. I asked no questions about consulting yet. I just wanted to really understand the team. Once I understood where they are, where they've been, where they are, where they want to go, they started talking about what does success look like. And then I asked, what are your expectations? What are you looking for in a consulting partner? And we probably spent about almost 30 minutes in discovery. And at the end of discovery, I then delivered what I call our discovery summary. And folks, this is, I truly believe, the most important thing that you can do. And I think the sales made right here, you do a great job of the discovery process. So take copious notes during discovery. And at the end of the discovery, like with Jenny, I said, hey, Jenny, thank you so much. I really appreciate you sharing all that information with me. I just want to make sure I have a good understanding of kind of what you talked about, what we talked about so far. That you have a team of 28 reps who are all taking customer service calls. The customers are calling in and they're looking for nose pads, new lenses, new temples, and they're doing a great job of that. They provide great customer service. Your team is pretty young. Most of them are new and want to see this job as kind of a stepping stone in other parts of Oakley. That you've been here for the past year and that sales are kind of flat. And you're really looking to bring in a sales consultant who can help teach the team to transition from the customer service call into a sales call, selling other new products, selling shoes, selling backpacks, selling software, clothing, what you guys call it. And that you're really looking for, when you went from consulting firm, is somebody who has done this before, who can tailor the information directly to Oakley, but also it's really important that Oakley totally owns the material too. Is that pretty much everything they talked about? Anything I missed at all? And Jenny says, you know what, GA? Let me tell you what's really going on. You're absolutely right, sales are flat. And I was brought in here to increase sales. And I'm a little concerned that if we don't increase sales quickly, I may lose my job. Now, why did she wait so long to share that information with me? I think a part of it has to do, when you're talking to somebody in a sales situation, where is their resistance? I think the resistance starts off really high and the receptivity is down here. But what do you do in the conversation that starts to reduce that resistance and increase the receptivity? And there's lots of little nuances in what you say and how you say it that makes a big impact on that resistance. It can either increase it or it can decrease it. What do you say and how do you say it? Are you increasing resistance or are you decreasing resistance? And are you increasing receptivity? And this discovery summary, it happens. Why did she say, wait so long to tell me that really vital piece of information? I don't think I had built the trust with her. Now I went back, put together a proposal. When I came back, I walked through the proposal. And what was my proposal going to do? Yes, it was going to increase sales, but more importantly, what was it going to do? Going to save Jenny's job, wasn't it? Now, did it say that anywhere in the proposal? No. But did I get that point across and I verbally communicate that to her? And when we got to we're up against a couple other really big companies, much bigger than my company. And when I asked her, Jenny, why did you decide to go with us? She said, GA, it was so obvious that you understood our situation better than anybody else did. Now, did I really understand it better, or did I simply ask better questions? But did I have a process that allowed me to demonstrate back to her that I knew her situation better than anybody else? And think about it. Does every one of your clients think that their situation is totally different and unique? You might, I hear they said all the time, you might be working with 5 other companies just like ours, but our company, oh, we're different and unique. And a big part of discovery, again, is for the customer, for them to realize, wow, these guys do get it. They do understand my company. And now your tailored solution is so much more tailored to what they need. You're now able to uncover the emotional needs, their logical needs, but you also know what success looks like, and you know what their expectations are of you, their partner, and of your products. So it's really about being able to use that process effectively. But think about it, as a coach, how do you now communicate that and train people and transfer the skills that you have across the entire organization? And really when it comes down to it, it's being a great salesperson does not always translate into being a great manager. So we use what we call the skills transfer process. And the skills transfer process, it has 5 steps to it. Step number 1 is explain. Number 2 is demonstrate. Number 3 is practice with coaching. Number 4 is observe. And number 5 is feedback. Now here's what we usually see happen when we go into an organization. The manager's like, hey, come over here, sit down, watch me on this sales call. And they use that quote unquote watch me method. And folks, the watch me method is an extremely difficult way to learn. Most people do not learn by watching. They learn by doing and experimenting, and we call it learning is in the wobbles. Babies don't learn to walk by walking, they learn to walk by falling down. And same with communication. Communication is a verbal sport. And what we see is most organizations by a thousandfold underestimate the time, the energy, the effort, and the repetition it takes to become a great communicator. Just think about it. As a coach or as a salespeople, what is the one fundamental skill you have to be really good? It's communication, isn't it? But how much time do you actually practice your communication skills? So with this skills transfer process, it's not the watching method. It's, hey, you're going to explain to them what you're going to do, what we're going to learn here in this one-on-one coaching interaction. Then you as the manager are going to demonstrate what does great sound like. And sometimes our manager's like, oh my gosh, what happens if I don't do it very well? Well, we got to work through that. We have to get I think it's important, especially in communication, that the manager has to be pretty darn effective at it, or you have to come up with some other ways to do that. Maybe it's recorded videos, recorded calls, recorded snippets, creating a call library. Where can people hear what does great sound like so they can hear it, so they can actually then communicate it? And then it comes down to practice and have them actually practicing out loud. And here's the difference we see between sales coaching and deal-specific coaching. When I sit down and we work with managers, oftentimes we'll ask, how often do you coach your team? They're like, oh, I coach my team all day long. All day long they walk into my office and ask me questions. And we really call that deal-specific coaching. Usually what we see is somebody walks into the manager's office, sits down and says, hey, boss, I'm working on this deal. Can you help me put it together? And the boss takes a look at the deal and says, okay, yeah, here's what you need to do. Here's how we want to price it. Hey, here's who we need to get involved in the organization. Here, why don't you call this other person? They had a deal just like this. Ask them a couple of questions. And the coach feels like they're coaching because they're doing what we call deal-specific coaching, where they're putting the deal together, but then we have to transition from deal-specific to sales coaching. And so that's where you have to ask your associate, okay, now that you got the deal put together, when you're meeting with them, present this proposal. What's one concern they may have? All right, it might be pricing. How are we going to overcome that pricing objection? You play the role of the customer, I'll play the role of the sales associate. Let's practice that. And if you practice that 2 or 3 times, do you think your associate, when they walk into your client's, your prospect's office, sit down, present the proposal, and just like on cue, the prospect says, oh, that sounds great, but you know what? I'm looking at this right now. There's a little concern about your guys' cost. And you think that if your associate practiced that a few times with you, they will communicate more effectively at that moment of truth under pressure in front of that prospect. It's that practice that we see is so often missing from organizations. If you get nothing out of this whole entire webinar, if you start practicing more what you're going to say, how you're going to say it, that's the key. And what we call it, it's about how do you go from verbal knowledge, that's knowing something, to verbal skill, that's being able to say it effectively, to verbal mastery. And that's being able to say the right thing at the right time in those critical moments that matter most. So now you practice. Now as a coach and manager, are you out in the field observing your team, executing the fundamentals, and are you coaching them? And our whole belief system is, we call it coaching forward. How do you coach through the front windshield versus the rear view mirror? Here's what we see usually happens a lot of times on sales calls. You have a manager, you have a salesperson, they go on a sales call, you get back in the car, and the first question the sales manager usually asks the salesperson is, hey, how do you think that went? And the salesperson says, I thought it went great. And the coach says, yeah, I thought it went pretty good too, but how can we talk about a new product we've been talking about for 3 weeks now? And all of a sudden, the coach starts coaching through the rear view mirror. They start coaching through that last interaction. And folks, I don't care how good you are, none of us can change that last interaction, can we? We spend all the time trying to do that, don't we? So quit coaching through the rear view mirror. Start coaching through the front windshield. You can't change that last interaction, but can you change the next interaction? Absolutely. So what they did in the last interaction is somewhat irrelevant, because as soon as you start picking on the last interaction, watch your salespeople get defensive about what they did or did not do. So what you got to do is quickly move it forward. Hey, on this next call, one of the things we want to work on is how can we communicate our new product? Let's practice that right now. And again, if you practice it right now, They know the expectation. Do you think on the next interaction, they will be able to execute that more effectively? And so how do you give that feedback? And how do you let the person know what they're doing specifically and what they need to do to get even better? So again, the 5 steps to what we call skills transfer. Take the skills that you have and transfer to the rest of your team. You explain what you're going to do and how you're going to do it. You then demonstrate it. You have them practice it until you feel they're efficient and effective at it. Then you observe them and you give feedback. It really comes down to, as a coach, you really need to be conscious of what you do. And we call it becoming the conscious, competent coach. So that's a picture. That's not me nor my son, but my son Jack, he was 15 and a half. He got his permit. And we were going to teach him how to drive. So I took him over to the high school and I handed him the keys to the car. He got in the car and he had absolutely no idea how to start the car. I was so happy about that. Why? Because I was pretty sure Jack had not been sneaking out like I did as a kid and out driving mom and dad's car. But we drove around the parking lot, and Jack was at that time, and this is kind of the learning circle, how the learning circle works. He was unconsciously incompetent. Unconsciously incompetent, meaning he didn't know what he did not know. But once I started taking him around the parking lot, he did an online class, and he did some behind the wheel with a professional driving instructor. He quickly became consciously incompetent. He now knew what he did not know. And so he'd get in the car and he'd go smog, seatbelt, mirrors, over the shoulder, go, smog. And he was very conscious about what he was doing. All right. And then it took about 6 months or so before he got his license. He went from being unconsciously incompetent to being consciously incompetent to then being consciously competent. Meaning he now knew what he needed to do and he was pretty good at it. But where did most people go? Now think about, how did you drive to work today? You had a coffee cup in one hand. Was your hand on the steering wheel? No, it was probably over here, texting with the other hand, driving with your knees. But all of a sudden you showed up at work, didn't you? You were unconsciously competent. Same thing happens with salespeople. They become unconsciously competent. I mean, they start just doing things without thinking about it. Now you as the coach need to be able to observe, what are your top performers doing? What do you want to see more of or less of, and become conscious of those elements, and then become a competent coach on how you teach people how to do that. It's all about becoming the competent, conscious coach. So we really covered a lot of material today, and just thinking about, putting this into practice, we're working with Rogers Communications. It's a client of ours, and one of the issues they're having, Rogers Communications, you don't know them, they're the Sprint, Verizon, AT&T, Mobile, all put into one company up in Canada. And so they brought us in. They wanted to increase their revenue on inbound calls, but they also, a big scorecard piece for them was their Net Promoter Score. And their Net Promoter Score at the time was in the single digits. And they wanted to increase that. We put a foundational sales program in place along with a leadership and coaching program, and then put certification in that. We train about 480 reps in 7 different locations to communicate more effectively. We gave them the framework. We taught them the nuances of communication, and we had them practice it enough so they became competent in those key moments when they're talking to a new customer. They have seen an 86% increase in Net Promoter Score, which is unheard of. The division we're working with is by far the best division when it comes to Net Promoter Score in all of Rogers. But more importantly, we're able to prove that if you have a better conversation leads to a better Net Promoter Score, which then leads to increased revenue. And so we were going for Net Promoter Score and a better conversation, knowing that if we do that, it'll increase the revenue. And we've seen that happen time and time again with our clients like Google. We've been there for over 10 years now. Been with the Robins for 6 years, Caterpillar. So it's all about having the right process in place as a salesperson, practice it enough so you can say the right thing at the right time in those critical moments. But it's about the management team. And it's about really being able to lead the team effectively and be able to transfer the skills that you have as a great salesperson and take the best practices from the rest of your team and your organization and instill those into your current team. And when you do that, Your onboarding happens much quicker. Your new employees, they get up to speed much faster. Your current employees, they become more effective, all because they're communicating more effectively. And we truly believe that when people are better communicators, it helps everything they do in their life. And so I just want to leave you with one last thought before we dive into questions. It's all about creating a vision of what success looks like. Now, I'm not sure if any of you ever heard of Monty Roberts. Monty Roberts, as a young man, he was in high school, was a senior in high school, and he lived in Dallas, Texas. He was very, very poor. His father was a rancher, and they would go from ranch to ranch as a dad as a ranch hand. And Monty was a poor student. So there was in high school, and his English teacher gave them an assignment. And the assignment was, you need to go home and write, where do you think you'll be 20 years from now? And Monty went home and started talking to his dad and said, Dad, I got this assignment. Where do you think I'm going to be? I don't know where I'm going to be. And his dad said, son, I can't help you. I got work to do. You're on your own. So Monty started to sit after dinner that Friday night, started writing and thinking about where does he want to be 20 years from now? And he kind of got into it. And he spent most of Saturday writing up where he thinks he wanted to be. And what he realized, he wanted to be a rancher himself, but he wanted to own his ranch. He didn't want to work for someone else. He wanted to own a ranch that raised beautiful Arabian horses, that people would come from all around the world to purchase his Arabian horses. He wanted to have a 400-acre ranch. And in his paper, he actually drew out the ranch, and he wanted to have a home of his own. So he drew in the plan for this ranch a 4,000 square foot house with great detail, with this great room, with this beautiful fireplace, and he got super excited about it. And for the first time in his life, he actually put some real effort into his homework. He went that Monday, he went to teach, he went to school, handed the paper in, was super proud of it, super excited. He waited Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, finally the teacher gives the papers back. She puts the paper upside down on Monty's desk. Monty takes the paper, flips it back over, and on it, the top of the page, it says, F, see me. So Monty was pretty upset. After the class, he went up to the teacher. The teacher, I really worked hard on this. Why did I get an F? And the teacher said, Monty, you must have misunderstood the assignment. I asked you to write down and create what you think your vision of success is going to be realistically 20 years from now. Now, come on now. You are failing most of your classes as you have most of your high school. You're probably not going to even get your GED. We'll probably kick you out of here when you're 18. You're come from a family that has no money. There's no way you're going to own this big, huge ranch and raise these Arabian horses. So here's what I'm going to do for you, the teacher told Monty. You go home, you rewrite your vision as something that's realistic, and come back and turn it into me on Monday. So Monty went home pretty distraught and discouraged. One talked to his dad. His dad again said, son, I can't help you with that. You are on your own. So Saturday he started working on the paper. He typed up a couple pages, start on over, type up a few more pages, and decided we were going to typewriter, rip them up, throw that paper in the trash. Sunday night, about 11:30, he'd been working on the paper, got about 6 pages in, and he said, screw it. Tossed it in the trash. He went back the next morning and said, teacher, you keep your grade, I'm going to keep my dream. True story. Fast forward 18 years. Monty Roberts now owns a 3,600-acre ranch. He has a 4,600 square foot home, and he now tours kids through his ranch, through his high school, through his house. And true story, at the end of the tour, he always ends up in his living room, and he tells the story about his teacher and about how he had this dream of creating this ranch with his Arabian horses, and that people would come from all over the world, and that you've now seen it. And the house that you're sitting in right now, I drew this house when I was 18 years old. And he turns and he looks at the fireplace, and above the fireplace is framed, you can see this on 60 Minutes, is framed the paper and says, F, see me. And true story, after one of these tours, the teacher came up to him and goes, Monty, you don't remember me, do you? And Monty's like, I'm sorry, no, I don't. Monty, I was that teacher. I've changed my name, but I was the teacher who gave you that F. Thank you so much for keeping your dream and not letting me take the dream away from you. I don't know how many dreams I must have taken away from kids just like you. I am so sorry. Now, you might know Monty Roberts by a different name. They made a movie about him. Robert Redford played him. He's known as the Horse Whisperer. So the key is, though, he had a strong vision of what success looked like. Now's a great time as a salesperson, as a manager, as a leader, as we start going and finishing up 2017 and moving into 2018, really sitting down and figure out what does success look like? What is your vision for you and your team? And how are you going to execute that vision so that a year from now you can reach your goals? So with that, I would say, guys, thank you very, very much. I'll be happy to answer any questions you have, and I'll turn it back over to Brandy to moderate this.
Thanks, GA. I don't see any questions in the system. They can only unfortunately type them in, but I'll ask a few questions of my own while I wait and see if Randall and his team maybe have any questions or if Ruben has any questions. First of all, what do you think the biggest mistake companies make, sales managers make, hiring personnel make? What's the biggest mistake they make in hiring salespeople?
One of the biggest mistakes we see it over and over and over again, is that they want to hire people who, I'm a big believer in hire to personality, and I want people who are hungry, I want people who are humble, and I want people who are smart. And when I talk about smart, I'm talking about street smart. I'm talking about they've been there, done that. They are quickly coachable, and we see it all the time. They're hiring for somebody who's got a ton of experience. I will take all day long somebody who is coachable and who is ready to study the game over somebody who's been already doing this for 8, 7, 6, 5 years. So I'm taking a look at, and how are you hiring? Are you hiring for personality, or are you hiring for results? I want to teach people the process that we bring in our company, and I want them to bring their personality and put their personality into our process. What usually happens, though, when people hire for their past skills, we find as now have 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 salespeople all doing their own thing and not creating the sustainable results you're looking for.
Awesome. Randall does have a question. He asked if someone wants to get off the phone quickly, which I've been managing salespeople for 25 some years, and that's the biggest complaint I get from my salespeople is, how do I keep people on the phone? How do I keep people engaged? So he's asking, in regards to the discovery questions, if someone wants to get off the phone quickly, would you still suggest asking discovery questions?
Definitely so. And why do they want? Here's the question you have to ask yourself, though. Why do they want to get off the phone quickly? And the reason I believe it is because they don't see value in having a conversation with you. So if you're making, and let's talk about, you're making outbound cold calls. What we find usually when people are making outbound cold calls, we work with a lot of companies who do this. The caller calls in and calls the person and says, "Hi, I'm GA with R3 Consultants. Do you have a minute?" All right, we increase the performance of sales teams, and all of a sudden they start diving right into questions. I don't know who you are really, what you do. More importantly, what's the benefit of me answering your questions? But if you can demonstrate with a quick success story of who you are, what you do, and ask relevant questions that aren't just for you, the salesperson, then I find people are much more inclined to stay on the phone if they see some value and they know that, hey, this is not your first rodeo, you've done this before. So when we work with cold calling, we work on a 3-step process. Step number 1 is introduction, hook, and the ask. I mean, folks, I think, yes, people are busy. And so calling in and trying to have a 10 or 15 minute, 20 minute, half-hour conversation right then and there, that is tough. So I think the goal of that first phone call is to get a second phone call where we can do that deeper discovery. So I'm going to call in and introduce myself and go right into an issue that they're having. We were working just recently with a auto dealership, or excuse me, with a bank, and they're calling on auto dealerships. And she was calling and saying, "Hey, I'm a bank, I'm local, I'm going to come by and introduce myself." And everybody's like, "No, thank you." But once you called them with a hook, what was an issue they had? Once you called and said, "Hey, one of the issues we know, we specialize in working with auto dealerships. One of the issues we know that auto dealerships have every single day is getting quick 24-hour notification on non-sufficient fund checks. Is that an issue you're having?" And almost to a T, almost every dealership, "Oh my gosh, that's a huge issue." Well, great. I'd love to spend 15, 20 minutes with you. If you have some time right now, if not, let's set up a phone where I can show you how we do that for companies. So do you understand the issue, and can you quickly give a hook that demonstrates, I know what you're going through and we can solve that problem? Watch them want to stay on the phone longer with you. When they see the benefit to them versus most of the time when we watch cold calling happening, all the questions are for the benefit for the salesperson.
Great, excellent answer. Also, one of the things that we talked about in the intro to this webinar, and when we talked about what the value of this webinar would be, we talked about a positive and memorable experience. Can you just give a couple of examples that you've seen in the companies that you've worked with, because you've worked with, obviously, you know, Google, DirecTV, Cox. What are some examples that you would give me of things that those companies did to, over the phone and in a short exchange with clients, create that positive and memorable experience?
So, you know, right now we're working with ASU, and one of the things we're looking at is talking to new students, and we did it with University of Phoenix. And it is about having the right process of quickly, how do you build rapport? But more importantly, one of the things that's about setting up an agenda statement. What's going to happen on this phone call? And then it's about asking the right questions. But it's the questions that they ask where people walk away saying, oh my gosh, these guys really get me. They understand what I'm trying to do when it comes to my education. And then the solution is really tailored to my needs. It's not a generic solution. And even though the products are the same, the solution feels and sounds tailored to my needs. And that's what we see companies who are really, really good, who really crush it, is when their salespeople ask enough questions and listen, and then use that information when they're presenting that solution, where the customer sits there and say, oh my gosh, that's exactly what I want to do. I now see how your product's going to help me get there. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Very, very helpful. I have a couple of people still logged on, but I don't see any more questions. So is there anything else that you wanted to throw in, GA, before we wrap up and give people back a precious 10 minutes of their time?
Absolutely. No, just at the end of the day, it's all about the two parts. One part process, one part personality. But having the right process in place and getting your team to put their personality into it. And it's about being able to say the right thing at the right time in those critical moments that matters most. And folks, it's not easy. Being a salesperson, being a sales manager, it's tough work. But go out there and put the time and energy in before you're in front of that client, and watch how your sales soar, watch how your team soars, because they're more effective when it comes to what they say and how they say it.
Okay, and one last opportunity for you to talk about the benefit of working with you and with the team over at R3. What is the benefit of bringing in an outside consultant to help your organization implement some of these skills and processes and procedures that you've talked about in the webinar today?
At the end of the day, it's all about execution. And the simple fact, for the last 20 years, we have experience in working with some of the largest companies in the world, where we get to be in companies every single month, and we get to see what do they do and what are the best practices they are using, and bring those to our clients. But everything we do is totally customized for our client too. So we take the best practices that we know from working with our clients and also get to observe from you. But more importantly, at the end of the day, we're an execution company. Knowing what to do is totally different than being able to actually execute it. So we're going to come in and we help our clients execute the fundamentals. Now, when more people, more B and C players are executing the fundamentals of A players, that's when you start seeing this dramatic flywheel effect and results start going through the roof. So why do companies work with us, and why do we have multiple year relationships with them? Because we get down in the weeds and we help their managers coach more effectively. We put the right processes in place, and we help them execute those things throughout, from new hire, throughout onboarding, throughout the entire sales career.
Thank you so much. I also feel, just to add on to that, from my experience, when someone comes in from outside and looks at what's going on in your organization, as you know, we've worked with you as well. When someone comes in, they look at it with fresh eyes and with a new perspective, and what that organization may feel like is going right or wrong, it may not be the case when you look at it from just a process perspective and from the top down. So I feel like it's very beneficial to have a third party that's not emotionally engaged and involved in the success of your company until they come in and learn your process. Once that happens, you're able to look at everything from a new perspective and see things that you didn't necessarily see before. So highly recommend having a consultant come in, whether it's R3 or another consultant, of course. I think it's truly beneficial and can definitely change the direction of your organization up to move up and succeed. So I want to thank everyone for your time. Thank you, GA. Did a wonderful job, got to everything even more quickly than I expected. So I'm going to give everybody back a few minutes of their time, and thank you so much. Everyone have a wonderful day.
Thank you
Good
all.
luck out there selling today.